The Knights of Ren podcast is brought to you by Cool Stuff Inc., your source for Star Wars Destiny singles, sealed product, and more. Check them out at coolstuffinc.com.
Show me again the power of the darkness.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll. D20radio.com. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the Knights of Ren, episode 513. With us this week are Nick, Todd, and Rick. How are y'all doing?
Well, yeah, I wasn't last.
Yeah, he said my name first, so I can say hi first.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
But hi, I'm doing good.
Hey, guys.
What's happening?
Not much, not much. We are getting ready for Worlds. All of us got our tickets. But before we get into the show, we would like to give a huge thank you and shout out to our Patreons, especially our newest Patreon, Terry Lee. Thank you for supporting the show. We are so excited for everyone's support because we have a ton of stuff that we're going to be doing at Worlds with all of our coverage, all of our interviews, podcasting, and just so many things we have in store coming out of the FFG headquarters in Minnesota. But we are getting ready for Worlds. There is so much coming out, and we want to make a big announcement. If you haven't already heard, we are doing our Happy Hour Meetup 2.0. If you were there last year, you know we had a great time. We packed out the house. It was completely family friendly. We were hanging out, giving away free swag, talking about our tournament reports, Destiny stuff, trading, just really having a great community time. And it's going to be bigger and better than ever. And I believe Todd has an announcement from Total Access Games.
No, yeah, Total Access Games is going to donate a box to be given away at the Happy Hour 2.0. So, yeah, come show up, get a free box.
Is that a box of Destiny?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's going to be of Destiny.
Yeah. What set is that?
Which set? Yeah.
Say Awakenings. Say Awakenings.
No, don't say Awakenings.
Are you sure? Because I got Awakenings. All right, yeah, no, we'll do Legacies.
All right. That's pretty exciting, though.
It is kind of exciting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, show up, drink some beer, have some food, potentially win a box. I can't complain.
I don't know, a signed Ahsoka Tano card?
Yeah, that's another thing that we've got a lot of stuff we're going to be announcing as we get closer to Worlds and the Happy Hour. But yeah, we've got a booster box coming from Total Access Games. We also have a signed Ahsoka from Ashley Eckstein herself. We met her during Celebration, and then she came out to Disney Springs earlier last year, and I was able to get her to sign, you know, her card. She was really kind and really excited about it. And she was like, oh my gosh, what is this? So I got to tell her a little bit about, you know, Destiny and all that. But we're going to be giving that away to one lucky guest. And, you know, as always, we're going to have all kinds of swag, play mats, such and such. But we don't want to spoil everything right now. We just want to hype up the event. So if you haven't already RSVP'd, definitely check it out. We're going to have a link in the show notes. We've already got quite a few people coming out. We've got currently 42 en route. We're expecting a whole lot more. So definitely RSVP. Make sure you check out the time and the date. It's going to be Friday, May 4th at 7 p.m. at Joe Sensor's Restaurant at Sports Theater. It is like a block away from FFG. You can walk there. You can ride share. It is super close. We're going to celebrate May the 4th with Destiny and just so many people in the community. And, you know, if you've got friends playing other events, like this is not just a Destiny event. And it's not just a Worlds event. If you're listening and you didn't get a ticket, but you want to come and hang out, you don't have to be going to Worlds. You don't have to have a badge or anything. Anyone is open to join and come hang out. This is a community event. Everyone is welcome to just, you know, play some games, have some fun, win some free swag. So we can't wait to see you there. We're just really excited about all the special stuff that we're going to be doing at Worlds. So getting ready for Worlds, we have to prepare with just so many decks that are out there in the meta. There's just way too many to just sit down and talk about in a single setting. So leading up to Worlds, as we did and started last week, we're going to be doing deck dissection and breaking down all of the meta decks, talking about the characters, the cards, the lines of play, and things to expect. Because if you're getting ready for Worlds like we are, there is just a lot of stuff to account for, a lot of variables to consider. And we've also got something else to talk about. FFG announced on Twitter that they're supposed to be updating their holocrons. Now, they didn't say when, and they didn't say what that means exactly. So we're going to have to say that everything we talk about might need to be, you know, given a grain of salt in case they say, you know, they're changing the balance of the force, if they ban a card or if they pull a card off the ban list. Like, we don't exactly know what they mean when they they say, you know, we're going to have an update to the holocrons coming soon. That could mean a lot of stuff. So as we go through this, just be aware, grain of salt. FFG could drop a bomb on us and things could shift dramatically, or nothing could happen. We don't really know. But when that does happen, we will address it on the most recent podcast, and we'll make the necessary course corrections in discussing the decks that we feel will be represented at Worlds and how to deal with them as we see. So first off, we're going to start talking about Hondo X decks. So that's going to be Hondo and then his partners in crime, which include Potu and Yoda, that we're mostly aware of, seeing them in the meta performing well at all the regionals. So first of all, let's talk about Hondo and Potu.
Hondo specifically is kind of the key to both of these decks, and whoever you pair him with is just kind of getting you some sort of value out of it on top of it, right? So Hondo himself is really good at fighting decks that struggle on resources, that need to be spending their 2 to 3 resources a turn to build their board state and get the dice out there to become, hit that critical mass and close the game out. His special ability to make your opponent choose to either pay you 1 resource or take 3 damage and deal 3 damage to one of their characters of your choice turns out to be really good. It's showing 3 damage on 2 of his die faces, or gaining a resource and disrupting your opponent. Good thing is, though, that you get to decide as the opponent of the Hondo player, so you can make that choice depending on what's going on in the game. Sometimes it's better to just take the damage early to not let them build up their board state and get into a worse position for you. Sometimes it's better to just pay them off and not take that damage, and that's going to be really dependent on what you're playing against it. Yeah, I think some of the key things to this deck, no matter which one you're pairing with, I think the real big is cunning on the Hondo. There's a lot of good specials that are seeing a lot of play in a lot of decks. So not only do you get the access to whatever you brought to the table, you're also going to get access to whatever they brought as well. And a lot of times that can be pretty game changing. Your opponent's not going to want to put down a light bow that they're going to just be taking 3 damage a turn from, or removing their shields or whatever, just into your cunnings, because you can easily get to those specials probably better than they can. And there's a lot of just choices that cunning then makes your opponent have to make, and it's going to trigger like the card is on the character. So for like Poe's Blaster, it's always going to deal 3 damage if it's on Poe. Obi-Wan's Saber is going to count the shields that are attached to the character that Obi-Wan's Saber is attached to. So that can get out of hand pretty quickly.
The other thing to keep in mind, too, is that this probably runs one of the best mitigation packages in the game currently. The fact that it has access to Force Illusion, Overconfidence, Easy Pickings, and Tangle.
Well, that's if you're running with blue, if you're running with Yoda.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
With Poe, you don't have it. I agree. I think the blue side does have a little bit better mitigation than the red side.
You still have defensive position, right?
Yep.
I mean, that can definitely wipe the board from some pretty good rolls on the opponent. It's a lot faster, I think, than a lot of the decks out there, which then lets them run Planetary Uprising and be able to get in the claim and deal some more damage. Poe is really good with running interference on the yellow side there, being able to run the ambush blasters that you get in there to, if you have the double running interference, be able to play an ambush weapon and activate your character and being able to lock them out of both activation and playing a card. You also get, hit and run out of there as well, which can do that, same double running interference that the ambush weapons can. And Poe is a pretty decent beat stick when he gets loaded up. He has the focus and the special chaining that Yoda has as well. He's just not quite as good at it.
You can even run stuff like Y-Wings in the deck to kind of get extra value from your cunnings and just to have something there when one of your characters dies. Notably, that slows you down, so you can't always get as much value out of stuff like Planetary Uprising if you're running that. But there's just there's some good options for red and other specials.
So Nick, why don't you touch on Yoda then?
The other variant is Hondo Yoda, which is one that Agent and Zion and I played back in the Portland regional at the beginning of February or end of January. And I hadn't really touched it much until last few weeks, just looking at it again, and makes me feel like our original lists were just garbage, because like the amount of the kind of stuff that seeing the set and seeing what cards are good from this new set and what cards are bad, being able to like really feel like what you can get out of this deck. Honestly, I think the biggest, most notable card right now is Force Wave, and how absolutely devastating that card can be. Even if your opponent only has 2 characters, dealing the 5 damage even if you're taking one yourself, is still a higher end than you would ever been able to hit with like any other upgrade that you're running with Yoda or Hondo or Poe. Like if you're running of those, usually your specials are going to hit for about 3 damage. But with Force Wave, you're going to hit it for about 5. If they have one character left and you have 2 characters left, you probably are already winning the game anyways. So you don't really need Force Wave in that sense. But that it's just Force Wave is devastating, and versus 3 character lists like vehicle decks, which is probably the only ones that are running 3 characters consistently right now, other than maybe like a blue hero aggro deck. Yeah, like Force Wave is devastating when he does 6 to them and none to you.
Yeah, so, even more so with Cunning, in that you don't even have to pay the 1 resource to so trigger that.
The Cunning makes it so you don't have to pay the resource. Yoda in general, a Yoda special with a Force Wave die in the pool means you automatically have it. You don't need to have the resource beforehand. You take a resource, you flip it, you do the damage. That's why Yoda is just like perfectly meant for Force Wave, it feels like. On top of that, like what you get for blue over red is handcrafted light bow. If shields are more prevalent, obviously handcrafted light bow is just a better special than even Poe's blaster at that point. It costs 1 more to play the weapon down, but in general, Yoda Hondo also does make more money than Poe Hondo, because while you have no aggressive sides on Yoda's dice themselves, you are going to be generating generally more money, having more money from removal, stealing money from your opponents, playing down the big upgrades, and just slamming them for, huge damage round 2, ideally. And then one of the other great cards that pretty much any of the Hondo decks for Hero would really consider is running is double dealing. Like it's not guaranteed to want, but especially in Yoda Hondo, where both your characters have 2 special sides, your chances of not rolling a special between them in the round, especially after like a reroll or 2, are basically none. Like you're going to get double dealing every round as long as you have both your characters alive. So it's kind of like a really nice money maker in a deck that already has a lot of money, but it could definitely use the money when most of its upgrades cost 3, and it has big cards like Entangle and Hyperspace Jump in there too.
Yeah, I mean that the Yoda version is definitely more able to run the Hyperspace Jump, and it can get in and get out as fast, if not faster, than the Poe version can. So get in, resolve your dice, Hyperspace Jump out, and then still have money to pay for stuff on the following turn, especially with the addition of double dealing in there.
And it's worth noting that the Yoda Hondo at least is sitting 2 points under 30, so you get to run with like 4 to 5 to at least start with a shield. So you have the same effective health as the Poe version. I do think it's interesting though that like Hondo is our first neutral character outside of Rivals, but he just doesn't seem to have a good fit in villain right now from what I can see. Like we talk about Hondo X decks, we're talking about Hero. And I think the big reason for that is because of the special chaining. Like Hero has, there are 3 big characters for special chaining. You have Yoda, you have Ayla, and you have Poe too. And villain just doesn't have that at all right now. And I think that's why people are playing Hondo with that special chaining, is because without it, it's just an average deck. If you can't guarantee get 1 to 2 specials by the end of the round without them getting removed, like you just can't afford it with playing fair. You got a special chain.
Yeah, and it forces your opponents to remove dice that can turn into specials. So it's very consistent in the decks. You're not discarding to reroll a lot with these decks. Just because of the ability to manipulate your dice as well as this can, which, coupled with the amount of money that you can make, just means that almost every card in the deck is going to hit the table. I mean, there's very few things that you don't play in the deck. Like cards that you include in the deck that just don't see the table too often, right? It can play everything. It can play upgrades, then leave up mitigation, especially with the easy pickings and overconfidence. It doesn't have to run a bunch of 0 cost, less efficient removal just to be able to, to have it up whenever they need it. It can play Vandalize very easily.
Yeah, I think the biggest part, the only time it really doesn't have a lot of money is round 1. Like if you want to play Cunning right away, or if you want to entangle your opponent's dice, you're not going to have much money the rest of the round. You're probably not going to be able to get an upgrade down, like a big upgrade down, if you try to remove their dice round 1. But after round 1, it's just you want to be ending round 1 with probably 2 to 3 money in your bank if you can help it, because you want to get them Yodas rolling. And if you have to steal a resource from your opponent, or you're either ideally getting 6 damage in on your your opponent, or you're taking 2 resources from them, 1 to 2 resources. And that both of those are great scenarios for you to be in.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too that you need to take into consideration. Like if you just start making a ridiculous amount of money, then the opponent is going to be able to have an easier decision on just giving you even more money and not taking the damage from Hondo. But hopefully by that time you've gotten out, some cunnings and some other specials that you can resolve for the flat 3, or like Nick was saying, with the force wave for hitting for 5 or 6. And then you don't even really care at that point. You're just able to play whatever you want to play, deal damage, consistent dice, resolve them without your opponent having too much time to react to them unless they're getting them preemptively.
So if you're preparing to face off against this deck for Worlds, what are some of the tips and tricks that you would need to know in order to, help give you an advantage over, especially the Hondo matchup, because he's really one of the most enabling characters in the game right now, because he just threatens so many bad things happening if you spend your resources too early, or you give Hondo the resources at the wrong time, stuff like that.
The big thing is you want to try not to cry, especially when he takes your money or it hurts you really hard. That's the first step, because it's actually hard not to, because it's super oppressive to play against. It feels awful being on the other side most of the times. For an aggressive deck, something like Boba 7th, your best kind of bet is you want something like Friends in Low Places to make sure you get out that like good cheap removal, like easy pickings or overconfidence out of their starting hand. And you'll kind of know what you're walking into. If you can get the removal out of their starting hand such they have nothing, you get 1 round, you play out like a Vibro Knife or an Ancient, some kind of 2-cost upgrade. You'd be like, I'll take my 6 damage round 1. Or even if they play a Cunning, you might take 9 damage round 1. But if you can get out 6 to 7 damage on Hondo or Yoda round 1, you are in such a good spot to be able to just roll out and kill them at the start of the next round. That's like the best things you have to do. Is you have to aggressively reroll for as much damage as you possibly can early, because you have to put the pressure on the Hondo Yoda player. They need to be spending their resources for defensive things and not ramping into further upgrades. You need to eventually get ahead on upgrades and resources, which is not easy, especially with something that runs mostly 0-cost stuff as Boba 7, where you really don't have a lot of resource generation stuff, and you really don't have a lot of like 1-cost removal, at least. But you're basically playing a 2-cost upgrade, roll it out, deal your damage. But you need to at least ramp some, or else you're never going to be able to punch through.
Yeah, and getting that 2-cost upgrade out early allows you to then overwrite if you need to, and still leave up if you want to pay for Hondo, or if you want to get in with 3 resources on the next turn if you can. I mean, it's the 2-cost upgrade is pretty key first turn for you, and just taking that damage. Now, I don't really know who to go after first in either one of these decks. I mean, it makes more sense to get rid of Hondo in the Yoda version, but you kind of have to do it quickly before they can run into Second Chance and get out Force Illusions and things like that for them. You end up just putting so much effort into killing Hondo there. But if you don't get him early, you may run into a situation where you just can't kill him at the end of the game, and you go in and randomly get decked out.
You definitely need to get a character off the table as fast as you can. Like that's the biggest thing. Once one of their characters dies, their power level does significantly drop. Either killing Yoda kills consistency, or killing Hondo kills your main damage engine. And if you kill Yoda and all Hondo has on him is a Cunning, it's like you're paying him twice, and then if he rolls perfectly, which is like a 1 on 6 on Cunning, like if he rolls perfectly, you can pay him, you afford to pay him his 2 times in the round, and then you're taking like 3 damage. That's fine. If you can just take 3 damage around, you'll be able to overcome it eventually. Obviously, like a round 1 Cunning or a round 1 like Pose Blaster, or like just the big upgrades are kind of what will dictate probably your biggest target. If you're running a 3-character deck, I think you have to go after your Yoda first because of Force Wave, because it will just devastate you. Even 2-character decks, Force Wave is just still super good against you. And if you end up with Yoda at the late game with a Force Wave, he can still very much clean up with it. So it's a hard call. I think I lean more towards the Yoda variant killing Yoda first, just because of the consistency. Being able to deal with Hondo's dice on their own afterwards is not as bad. Versus Poe Hondo, it's obviously a little different, harder choice. And obviously Second Chance is probably the biggest question mark in that situation, because you know that if you don't kill Hondo before it comes down, you're just kind of screwed.
Yeah, I mean, that super dictates, like you said, which character gets the big upgrade first of what to take out. I hate dealing with Cunnings when both of those characters are still alive, because it's just so many chances of them being able to correct into what they need. And then it limits what I'm going to play against them to not give them any better specials that they can choose from. So like Cunning hits Hondo first turn, I'm just focusing everything I got on the Hondo. I mean, Poe's blaster hits, I might go after Poe there first. Obviously, Force Wave hits, I'm going after Yoda. Yeah. So, like it, like you said, it really just it depends on what they get out first there. So,
and like it also determines like whoever they starting shield. Like if they take 2 shields and put them on one character, it's probably just easier to go after the other because you just need to knock someone off the board.
Yeah, especially with the fortify, if they get 3 shields on to somebody, like just don't. Which
I don't think is ever the right idea. You want to at least split it up 2 and 1.
Right, but it does signify what your opponent thinks is the better character in there too, though.
Yeah.
So what's a bad matchup for this deck? Like, what deck gives this one troubles?
I mean, Boba 7th isn't as good or bad versus as some people might think. It's more even than I would expect. Like, if a Boba 7th player knows what they're doing and can actually hit a lot of damage round 1, I think they have an edge, but it doesn't always work out that way. And sometimes you'll just get your stuff entangled round 1 and then still take 6 damage and do like nothing. Like if your rolls don't cooperate with you on the other side, you're still not going to do much. But otherwise, like a deck that can actually make money, a lot of money, and keep ahead of it is probably the best thing. I think Thrawn Talzin would be pretty good against it. I've not played it, but you can grab their big upgrades like Cunning. Like you can call 2 or for Cunnings or 3 for pretty much all their other big nasty upgrades. Versus Poe Hondo, you got the Poe's blaster, so 2 is definitely like a great number versus Poe Hondo. That deck makes a ton of money. It doesn't deal a lot of damage early, but it does make a ton of money. Yeah, and I'm sure a few of them, some of the mill decks that can make a lot of money and just chew through your deck really fast would have the survivability to withstand the deck as well.
Yeah, if they're able to make shields and make money, and then do a quick round of cards in the beginning, you're probably going to get there. Now, the 3 character mill decks having to deal with Force Wave.
Oh, I think the 2 character decks are much better versus it, just because they're faster at milling and playing out their round. So like a Yoda Riken or a Yoda Padme are probably better than the 3 character ones. Because the 3 character one has only got 3 dice. It's kind of slow. It doesn't actually make nearly enough money. Versus one of the mill decks that actually runs 2 Yoda dice is going to make a lot more money.
Yeah, I mean this deck, it does. I mean it matches up well against the field as it stands right now.
Yes. Yeah, it is pretty good against most of the most popular meta decks right now.
Just because of the way that it can fight the resources, and a lot of decks are really wanting to spend those resources right now. And, I mean, who's to say like 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now we're at Worlds if this still stands up as way as it does. But I know that it was able to do very well in the regional that I was at, and a lot of people picked it up to fight the Boba 7th that was big in Maryland at the time. And Nick does have it right. If the Boba 7th sister player knows how to fight it, they can definitely win against it. But it also has a little bit of splash damage against the other decks that are trying to make trying to utilize their money as effectively as they can and as quickly as they can. Mm-hmm. There's a pretty low average starting hit point total right now, and that coupled with the fact that they want to spend money makes this deck really shine against them. So it is pretty favored against the top decks right now. But those decks can definitely beat this if they know what they're doing.
And that's not to say there isn't cards you could tech in to work well against it in the long run if you expect to see a lot of it. Like a deck that starts thinking about actually putting something like Fair Trade into it could really, really ruin the Yoda Hondo players, or Poe Hondo. Probably more Yoda, because Yoda's the one that'll sometimes be like, I have 6 resources and I'm just waiting to draw some upgrades next round. But like, yeah, that could just really ruin someone's day if you hit them with a Fair Trade or something like that. But there's other tech cards that would definitely be stuff that you wouldn't play as much of unless you have a deck like this in the meta.
All right, so moving along, we are going to talk about Mama Talzin and the decks that she empowers. Similar to Hondo, she is a very powerful utility piece for whatever deck she's playing in, but she's going to be seen in a lot of different decks doing a lot of different things. So we're going to discuss Talzin and the different matchups or the different deck teams, all that kind of stuff. So Rick, why don't you talk to us a little bit about what Talzin does and some of the more popular meta decks that she's been seen in that might be performing well at Worlds?
Yeah, so Talzin initially got spoiled, we kind of thought how difficult it would be to really push the odd valued cards in your deck. You know, what are you giving up in order to be able to consistently trigger her? Luckily, Legacies just infused the card pool with very, very good 1 to 3 cost cards in there that definitely make it worth giving up those, you know, especially the 0 cost. 2's not so much, but definitely the 0 cost. And then even so, like with the 30 card deck, you can still run, you know, I would say 4 is probably your high point on the even number cards. Now, whether that's going to be most likely Chance Cube in order to still be able to play all those cards that are going to cost more than 0, or, you know, Holocron to be able to cheat things out, it's still definitely very doable. Now, you will end up hitting some evens on your pulls there when you have 4 or more even cards in the deck. There was one time when I was playing Talzin Kylo 2 that, you know, I had a very pivotal witch magic that needed to heal some amount, and I flipped up 3 even cards on the top. Had a second witch magic in hand that probably would have closed the game out for me there, but just was not able to play it at that point. So just keep that in mind when building there, that, you know, 4 is probably your top end that you want to go on it. So, I mean, with that said, her ability, when you can, with 90-something% certainty, be able to just flip whatever dice that you want to whatever side that you want after you activate her, is definitely put her into the top tier of characters that came out in the Legacies. And then, you know, pairing her with, you know, like I said, Kylo 2, you know, Thrawn has popped up most recently to be a very threatening pair for her, as well as Aurra Sing. You know, that has turned out to be not only playable, but, you know, was able to win. Yeah, what did that win? That went undefeated in a GQ, right?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that she empowers. I mean, Aurra Sing by herself was kind of, you know, everybody kind of thought she was cool, but never really panned out. Then all of a sudden you throw, you know, Mother Talzin with her odds package in there, and now she's a pretty threatening character to be able to consistently hit for, what, 4 or 4, you know, anytime that she wants to. So
yeah, Talzin is definitely a character I think that has actually shined more in the trilogy format right now than she is in standard. Not that she's not good enough. Like, her ability is great. Her die is great for 12. It's just, for whatever reason, she just hasn't been part of the most top tier of decks lately. That's not to say that there isn't something that won't be great to run her with for Worlds. Even the 5-die decks starts with her, like the running with like Bala and Stormtrooper for just rainbow and guns isn't the worst kind of deck. You get a lot of consistency there still, a lot of guns. I guess the problem with her is that while she does play unfair, she also kind of just like walks into some of the really good removal, like easy pickings. You either walk into it, or you have to suboptimally change your dice sometimes, or into the garbage chute you roll out, and like she plays too fair sometimes for her own good. I think that's probably why right now Thrawn Talzin might be one of the best versions of her, because it doesn't play as fair. It's got action sheets. It looks at your hand. It takes away your removal before you get to do it. And it just tries to roll out big upgrades and big heals.
Yeah, and the deck building restriction that you have to do on there hurts it a little bit. I mean, I just talked for about 5 minutes on how it's not so bad, but you know, it is relevant. Yeah. Having to run that. I mean, most importantly, it just makes you have to have ways to generate money in order to be able to play out what you want to play during the turn. Just the fact that you have very limited 0 cost cards in the deck, just if they can control your money, then they have a 9-point character to get rid of, and then you've just lost almost all of the reason for running all those greater than 0 cost cards in your deck, and then they kind of walk through after that.
And it's a deck that, like, when they know you're out of money, they know that your opponent knows they're safe too. So it's like, I know at least, like, a lot of times when I play, like, you have to sequence things a little weirdly when you know your opponents might have removal and they're sitting on money and they're sitting like 4 cards. You're like, they got to have something. Well, you might not do things optimally that way, but when you know they have no money, they don't really have a lot for action sheets. Like the only thing that they're going to do is like, well, they might have money showing, they're like, well, I at least have one action to do something else. Like the ability to play optimally because you know that they aren't going to be able to do something about it is actually a bigger detriment than you might think. And that's kind of where it comes to. She just plays a little too fair sometimes, even though she still cheats when she focuses them dice.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that unless you have some sort of action cheat like a tactical mastery or maybe a 4-speed endure, you're giving your opponent a chance to deal with that die that you turn to most of the time. And sometimes that's enough. But, her dice in herself with the, she does have, 2 damage on her. You're pairing her, she's cheap, so you can pair her with somebody that potentially has bigger damage sides on her. And sometimes it's just too much for them to deal with the added fact of you being able to switch to whatever you want, right? Like if she happens to roll out her 2 range sides and then you can still turn another one of your dice to a 3, like your opponent really can't do too much about that. Sure, they'll be able to maybe easy pickings the two sides, but they're still going to take 3. So they're taking something after that. So, I mean, it's just definitely something that you got to take out quickly when playing against this deck. Like I almost exclusively ignore whoever she's paired with until she's dead.
I think part of it too is like right now, like the villain removal package, like for the first time in the game, just doesn't feel as good as the hero side. So like as we get more sets and stuff, if we start seeing some better multi-die removal outside of stuff like Feel Your Anger for villains coming forward that costs an odd number. Well, and by that I mean specifically 1. You're not going to afford 3 cost removal as much with her. But like if we start seeing some really good stuff like that, I think that'll help out because losing doubts and he doesn't like yous and hidden motives are the kind of things that a lot of like that's the bread and butter of the Boba 7th deck, and that's the kind of stuff you just can't run.
If someone's listening and they want to play Talzin X, what are some of the things that this deck does well, and what are some of their good matchups if they're sitting down from Hondo, or they're going to have a good matchup, or vehicles? Like what's a good starting hand of cards with Talzin, and what's a good deck matchup for Talzin?
So as far as starting hand goes, with playing, anytime you're playing with Talzin, it doesn't really matter what you're paired her with. You're probably mulliganing for as many of those even cost cards as you can in your starting hand just to get them out of there. Hopefully you got a chance cube or a holocron if you're going that route to help you pay for a lot of those cards that you're running in your deck. Just the fact that Witch Magic and Rise Again are both odd, and they're probably going to be in that deck. Those are good things to look for. Specifically Witch Magic. I think Rise Again in your opening hand is probably a little too soon. But yeah, I mean, it's and obviously the usual, mitigation and an upgrade can definitely get you a long way. The good thing about her is that that she lets you kind of take that first turn of getting damage in, not necessarily having to build up your board state too quickly, right? You're obviously not going to be able to pay for those 3 cost upgrades, first action before you roll out, but she can definitely get you there, dealing damage and potentially building you up for the next turn where you can play one of those out and then kind of go on from there. So definitely like Chance Cube early on is definitely one of the things you want to look at on there.
It's kind of weird because I feel like it just still depends on which kind of archetype you're going with Talzin, because they're all kind of different. Like if you're running with Kylo, you're going to have the holocrons more likely than if you were running her with like Thrawn. You might not have holocrons. If you're running her with 5-die villain, you're probably running with her with guns instead. So it definitely is hard to say. I think what Rick was saying about getting a lot of your even costs, especially like your 0 cost, like those things like holocron or chance cube that you really want in your starting hand are just really nice to have early. The other ones being the like Dark Council and Crystal Ball if you're running those, because they're just really good 1 cost upgrades that you can either ramp into bigger stuff later or just use them for money generation and focus while they're there.
As far as good matchups, I think right now, I don't know if she really has any very good matchups for her with what's out there now. I think she's just a character that you're going to see people playing against you, and you need to kind of just know what she's looking to do and how to fight that, right? She's, like Nick said, it's an unfair fair deck. Right? It's able to correct, but the cost of doing so kind of brings it back into perspective. It's not something that's going to totally action cheat out, be able to correct what it wants and not give you any chance to fight against it. So honestly, the fair decks are probably her best matchup. Things that are kind of playing on somewhat even keel as her. Definitely doesn't like to see anything that can spike out 9 damage too quick. which unfortunately there's a couple of those out there right
I think
now.
that's the biggest detriment with things like Sabine, Obi-Wan, and Boba 7th being like the more aggressive decks. It's really hard for her to compete with 9 health against those kind of things. And I don't even know that Kylo 2 is good enough as a partner right now, because most of the decks, there's not a lot of mono decks. Even Sabine Ezra that's mono is running a lot more grays than it ever was. Like it's just Kylo's not where he needs to be a tier 1 deck like he might have been at previous points in time. Because I think her best matchup is still probably with Thrawn right now, because Thrawn gives you so much on his own with his ability to manipulate your opponent's hand and know what's in it, even if it's a much slower off of the door kind of deck, because it doesn't have much base sides of damage.
And them, basically ignoring Thrawn to get rid of Talzin. His ability is still relevant at any point in the game. And, if he's able to build up and get redeploy weapons and stuff from Talzin, then you're stuck there with a built up Thrawn that's getting into your hand every turn, focusing like crazy, and still dealing damage like you wouldn't think he would be able to do. Like he'd probably normally be somebody that you'd want to clear off the table first, but with Talzin, especially with her 9 health, you kind of get pushed towards her. And if they get a chance to get, riot batons and heirloom sabers and things like that out there quickly, it may be too late for you once you got rid of Talzin anyway. And, Thrawn with a crystal ball ain't no joke either. Being able to see what you're going to draw and be able to get rid of that too. He likes peering into the future sometimes. As far as bad matchups for her go, I think we kind of discussed it with those spiky damage decks. The decks that can fight your resources and have access to vandalize really hurt her. Getting rid of a chance cube and or holocron early on is going to put them a little too far back. Even with being able to correct, if they weren't able to make enough resources before you got rid of it, not only is the chance cube costing them a resource every time they roll it out, but if they happen to Talzin's ability for the 3 resource side and then you vandalize on it, you basically just wasted their turn. So yellow decks, Talzin doesn't like yellow decks at all.
Yeah,
and unfortunately there's a lot of yellow decks out there, and people have realized how good vandalize is.
All right, well, that's pretty much the end of our deck discussions. But before we go, now that we have to finally start to make our considerations, because we've got less than a month before we're going to be at Worlds, what kind of decks are you guys falling towards in favor of playing? I'm obviously going to be looking at Mill because, that's my thing. But what are you guys feeling out right now?
Honestly, I have no idea. There's this format is so wide open. There's so many different choices that you can play. I'm basically just starting to test and jam everything against everything right now to see where it falls out. We still have, an artificery tournament that's going to be a very key indicator of what the world is on, at least a week or two before Worlds, and that'll be a major indicator of what I finally base it on. I'm not playing Mill unless something really changes my mind between now and then. It's some sort of mid-range or burst aggro deck is probably where I'm going to fall at. Potentially something that can shield up, because people aren't really paying attention to shields too much right now. But, obviously that all can change depending on what happens. I'd like to see Hondo get the heck out of the meta. So if anybody in that artificery tournament can just stream every loss against the Hondo deck, that'll help me out a lot, because a lot of the decks that I'm looking at don't fare too well against Hondo. Obviously, like we said earlier, they can definitely beat it, but I don't want to sit across from Hondo right now. Hell, I might even play Hondo. Who knows if it doesn't get knocked out of the meta by then.
Yeah, if I was going right now, I'd still be playing R2P2.
You crazy, right?
No way, man. Still on it. And Hondo's probably its worst matchup, I feel, other than vehicles. Which I'm working on. I'm
those
trying
are
to
two
find
pretty
some
popular decks. Maybe R2P2's not good,
I know.
Todd.
Maybe it's not, but it's still where I'm at right now.
Yeah, but if all the Hondo and the vehicles are on day 1 and 2, then you don't have to worry about
Right.
it.
Yeah. So,
Or 1A and 1B.
so yeah, I'll wing it. How about that?
Sounds good.
I'm definitely bringing 2 decks. I'm not bringing my entire collection to completely mulligan at 11 o'clock the night before the tournament based on what everybody else had played on the 2 days beforehand, because I was lucky enough to get in the 1C, which I think gives you a little bit of an edge going in there. But, there is no way that I'm going to pack a trunk full of my Destiny stuff to be able to come out there and completely change up. So I'll have 1 to 2 decks that I'm on And depending on what I think the meta is sitting at and which one has a better chance is what I'm going to be on there for that day. Also got to pack draft stuff and trilogy stuff too for the side events, because I got 2 days of just watching people play Destiny while we're there, which is good for people that can't go because we'll have plenty of coverage to do.
Well, I'm driving, so I can easily bring my full collection and change my deck choice at 11 p.m. or 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. the night before.
We might be bumming from you then, buddy.
I might mail my collection to Nick's house the week before.
You might not see it again.
Dang it.
Gotta eBay that. I would love to play vehicles or some kind of 3-character deck. I don't want to play Yoda Hondo or Poe Hondo. I don't want to play Hondo, but it does seem in a very good place in the meta right now, so it would be hard to say that's a bad idea. So if I can find the answer to Hondo or find something that does well enough versus that's a 3-character and or vehicle list, that would kind of be my sweet spot. Obviously, it can't fold to the rest of the meta, but...
What knocked out Hondo in the early Legacies format? Like, it just kind of disappeared.
Wasn't it vehicles?
But I think it was just like the level of... I don't know. It's just I think vehicles did kind of knock it out, but vehicles back then was very different from not even that different. I think Yoda Hondo and Poe Hondo were a lot different from where they are now, and that might be part of it. Whereas like I think we're seeing better deck lists now, and that might be why they're able to come back. Where like I don't think they were running Vandalize in Hondo right away, and Vandalize works out really well. I don't think you were seeing Force Wave in Yoda Hondo. I know we weren't playing it. Like those are the kind of things that like kind of help it make up for that. But yeah, I mean, with like Ayla Rose vehicles, you had enough money to usually be okay. But the kind of things you can't really deal with is them vandalizing your ramp stuff or just force waving you and destroying half your team in one round.
Yeah, I think it just kind of went out of favor. Like all of the stuff coming out, just people wanted to play more. Like, I don't know if it ever really was.
No, I don't know if it was either. It just people played it. We did well with it that first weekend in Portland. That was also before Rivals was out. In Portland, we didn't even have the starters of legal, so there was no boba in the meta. So yeah, like it wasn't, I don't know if it was ever bad. It just wasn't popular for a little while, and surprised now it kind of is getting there again and pretty good.
So Sugi's playing Mill, everybody else doesn't know what they're playing yet.
Yeah,
R2P2.
You're not
R2P2.
sold on it yet.
I'm totally sold. I'm not really.
I mean, there's a chance I might play Thrawn Talzin.
There's no chance you're not playing Mill.
You're playing Mill. Shut up.
I'm probably, I don't know. Thrawn intrigues me. I might try and find someone to pair with Thrawn. Maybe like Thrawn 1-die Unkar. I really want Unkar to happen so bad.
Stop trying to make Unkar happen.
Unkar needs to
happen.
Back. I love Unkar. He's so good. He's too good.
He's not good anymore.
I know.
If he's so good, he should be great at 15 points then. Go for it.
You need to stop that. All right. Anyways, so we're going to get out of here and not have this conversation anymore. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. We will see you next time. Thank you for listening, and may the Force be with you. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and join us on all of our social media outlets. And a big thank you to all of our Patreons for your support. We can't do this without your help, so make sure to join us for all of our exclusive Knights of Ren content.